Hey everyone, welcome back to Tape Flight Garage. In this video, we're talking about headlights. So, first things first, the reason why I went with these torch beam 7 inches is because these have DRL halos that add a turn signal up front. And the reason why I did that is because, especially out here in Arizona, that dusk kind of golden hour, it can be a little bit difficult to see, especially a small red sports car. So during that kind of sunset hour, I do like to drive with the pop-ups up and I leave the DRLs on. And that way it's just another thing to try to grab other people's attention on the road. That's never a bad thing. I recommend these lights because A, they're 60 bucks, but the nitty-gritty of this video, what we're going to talk about is beam pattern. Should you go LED? Should you stick with halogen? What setup should you use? So we're going to talk about all that right now. Okay, so this looks like hieroglyphics. It's all going to make sense in a second here. We've got our two bulbs to represent the different types. You have a filament bulb here, and we've got a cheap LED. I'm just going to use them to demonstrate some points. And this is the basic, imagine this as how every single bulb housing works. It doesn't matter if it's a turn signal, a reflector, a side marker, a tail light, a brake light, or in this case, what we're talking about is headlights. You have a reflector housing. Your bulb sits in that reflector housing, and then you have a lens that that light goes through. Now, here is the big key with LEDs that you need to pay attention to. What determines a high quality LED, aside from the lumen output, is the placement of the chips in relation to where the factory bulb would be. So if you were to go stick this LED bulb in here, and if we put the bases at the same, now granted, I know that these are two different bulbs, but it's the same point here that I'm trying to get across. If these chips are in a different place than where the original filament would be, then the light source, the origin of the light that this housing is designed to reflect and push forward out through this lens is not going to be correct. And so what happens is you get that scattered beam pattern, or you get super bright lights that don't throw any light down on the road, and you just blind people and you piss everyone off, and then you're pissed off because you wasted your money. So that's what we're trying to avoid here. If you get LEDs that show, or that at least advertise that the chip is the exact same distance from the base of the bulb to where the filament should be, then the source of light is still going to be where it should be, and that's how you maintain beam pattern. So what I recommend for headlights is, and this is important for if you want to stick to like a classic looking setup where you have a glass housing and a fluted lens. The fluting on the lens is what actually directs how the light is thrown out onto the road and distributed. So all this stuff needs to work in unison. And so when you start changing things, changing parameters, the light isn't where it's going to be. It's not going to be fluted through the lens correctly, and that's what messes you up. If you want to maintain a classic look for the car, there are options out there where all this is sort of done for you. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the Holley Retro Brights. That's a great system if you just want high quality products that you know are all going to work together and you have one single warranty. I'm not going to knock them for that. It is expensive. $400 for a set of lights is really expensive. To give you a rough estimate or an idea, the lights that I have on my car were $58 from Amazon. Now granted, they're different for a couple reasons, and obviously they don't maintain the classic look, but I get the important thing is I get just as much light output and distribution. In fact, I'd argue it's probably a little bit better than the Holley kit. But here's what you can do on a budget to maintain that same effect. Go get an H4 housing. It's DOT approved H4, so that you can actually have a replaceable bulb, not necessarily a sealed beam. You can get a high quality LED bulb, and as long as you maintain that light source distance, put that in that H4 housing, and you'll have, voila, classic looking lights You can pick whatever color temperature you want. So if you don't want the blue, you can go with like a 3000K. Just make sure you have good lumen output. And in some cases, you might not even know the difference. You would never be able to tell aside from way brighter light. And you'll be taking more advantage since there's more light of the lens. And that's how you get better distribution and all that other kind of stuff. So that is if you want to leave the video right now, that's where you should leave it off if you want a classic lens. If a classic looking lens to maintain the look of the car. Period correct accuracy, if you will. But we're not done yet, because what I want to talk about is projectors. And projectors are why I specifically chose the type of bulbs that are, or the type of headlights that I use on my car. And this is really key too, because not all projectors are made equally. If you have a projector with the same issue, where a company is really cheap and they don't do any testing and they just throw a bulb into a projector, you're going to have the same problem that you would, where light is just going to look horrible. It's going to be scattered. You're not really lighting anything up on the road, or you're blinding people. So, and at that point, that's just a waste. So what do? You have to make sure that you at least watch videos for the set of bulbs that you are looking at. And what you really want to look for is a nice solid beam pattern like this with a hard cutoff, so that all the light from the LED is being distributed in the way that it should be. You get this nice hard cutoff line here, and that is how you know that you're not going to be blinding other people. Now, obviously, you have to aim the lights properly, but this is how you distribute light on the road without blinding other people, but still having super bright LEDs in there. So a projector is basically just this same setup with a smaller lens, and that's what fits in the overall housing. So let's talk about, let me pop the lights up real quick, and we'll talk about the Chinese brands and all that other kind of stuff. So the reason why these all look like UFOs is because to achieve that beam pattern, there you go, there's that cutoff that I was mentioning earlier. To achieve this beam pattern, there's actually 3 projectors in here. You have the 2 side projectors and that 1 top projector, and that's what makes up your main beam. Now, if we lived in a perfect world, or maybe in the future, a company like Redline or something like that can clean all this up to where it's one nice big projector in the center housing without all this other kind of stuff going on, really clean up the aesthetic, and still give us a high quality projector, high quality beam pattern like that. So whenever you see these Chinese headlights and you're like, well, why are there 3 of them or 4 of them? The bottom one is typically your high beam, and that just throws even more light out there. But that's what is going on here. So what you really have to pay attention to is the brand that you're looking at throws a beam pattern out like that. In fact, actually, let me turn off these lights real quick. I'll turn all the lights off in the garage here. This should give you a better idea. You get that nice hard cutoff line. That's what you're looking for. And you want the brightness, the hot spot of the light to be down here. That's how you're going to get that even distribution of light down onto the road. So if you just have something that looks like a spotlight or is super dim but is just kind of throwing light everywhere, then that's an indication that the bulb honestly sucks and you shouldn't use it. Great. So we got all of that out of the way. That's up for you to make a decision on what type of aesthetic you want, and you don't have to go with this brand. You can look at other brands and go from there. Maybe you want lights without the rings on them. All of that stuff exists, and that's on you to go do your homework. But the last thing that I want to mention in this video, and we're going to tack it on at the end here, is I just wanted to talk about how I got the DRLs working as well as the turn signal. All right, so now that we've got all that figured out, the last thing that I want to talk about is how to actually wire up the halo lights and the switchback turn signals. And hopefully we can do this in a thorough way and a clear way that makes sense to all of you guys. So this is the harness of the car, right? You have a ground, and then you have your parking light. You have the hot for the parking light, and then you have the hot for the turn signal. And then on the side marker, you just have positive and negative, just like everything else on the car. And on most of these aftermarket headlights, you'll have the main headlight, and then you'll have a little positive, you'll have a little spade connector for the DRL wire, and then a little spade connector for the turn signal. And all the magic happens with a little driver inside the back of the housing that says, hey, whenever we see voltage for the turn signal, we're going to shut the DRL off and flash the signal. So here's the way to wire all this up. To wire the DRL, you want to go from the side marker. I don't know what the deal is with the car, and I'm not going to really talk too much about it because I don't want to confuse you guys. But long story short, if you try to do all of this from the turn signal harness, weird stuff happens and it doesn't work properly. So what I found, what works best is you're going to take the positive from the side marker and you're going to connect that to the spade connector for the DRL. And then you're going to take the positive for the turn signal, and then you're going to connect that to the spade connector for the turn signal on the headlight. What I typically like to do is I just get some spade connectors. You can use males on one end to plug into the harness, and then that way one will plug into the turn signal bulb, and the other one will go to the turn signal up there. So you have one plug that will you're basically just splitting off that connection and connecting it that way. And then you'll do the same thing with the parking light. So you'll plug in to the harness of the car, and one will go to the side marker and the other one will go to the DRL. And that's basically it. That's all you got to do. So make two little extensions here, one that splits off, and you just go positive on the side marker to the spade on the DRL, and then positive from the turn signal and connect that to the spade for the turn signal on the headlight housing. That's literally it. So that's what I've done to my car, and the results have seemed to be okay. The other thing that you're going to need is at minimum an LED compatible turn signal relay. That's what should help you out with the hyper flashing. And as I mentioned with these last fit bulbs, they also have little resistors built into them so that it should help with the hyper flashing. Again, my car still does weird things-ish from time to time, but overall, it works pretty good. If you still run into issues, you probably are going to have to add in a load resistor somewhere from the harness to the turn signals if you're swapping everything out for LED. Typically, for example, if you leave this as a filament bulb, there's enough resistance in that to be okay. At least what I found on 944 specifically. So hopefully that makes sense. I will draw this like one more time and recap it real quick, and we'll send you guys off with that. So long story short, there it is one more time. From the plug of the car, you're going to use your splitter here, and you're going to plug one side into the positive and the other side to the positive for the DRL from the side marker. So that's going to give you the white ring, and then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to split off from the plug, and one is going to obviously go to your turn signal connection, so that's still good, and then plug into the spade connector on the headlight for the turn signals. And that's how you should get everything wired up and working. Okay, so that's where I'm going to leave everything off right now. Hopefully that gives you a clear path to move forward, and you can decide what you want to do. If you want a product that just is going to work and price doesn't really matter to you, and you have one solid warranty through one company, there's absolutely no reason why I would not recommend the Holley Retro Brights. If that's really what you want, go for it. If you're on a budget, like I said, go for the H4 housings. Get a high quality LED bulb and throw that in there. Again, pay attention to the lumen output of the bulb. Pay attention to where the chips are in relation to where the filament on an old school H4 bulb would be. And really the best way to use LEDs is to be in projector housings. Again, I just wish that there is a company that's out there that does like Resto Mod headlights. It's one single projector. Basically, it looks like the Singer headlights, but they are like $300 for each side. So that's just, again, that's kind of gnarly. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope that helps you guys out. And if you have other questions, or if there's something that I could explain a little bit better, just let me know, and I can always do a follow-up video. And, you know, if I really need to, I can lift the car and go underneath there and show you all that stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching, you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.